Can you imagine what's coming this year?
No, I'm just worried about my playing time going down. I don't know. Like, they went and got all these 6'9" guys. It don't make sense to have me at point guard no more, so.
I don't even know where you're sitting at.
Humans don't like to act like nuance exists.
If we take a couple pull-up transition threes or a step back or, a couple quick shots, like, I'm not going to come down the next possession and dribble the ball and shoot a contested two. So
Trying to not focus on just dribbling the ball for 23 seconds. And, I've been trying to let the offense work, and it doesn't always work.
And if I'm the one that's got to sacrifice a little bit, which I've been doing a lot this year, I think the guys that we're plugging in have no choice but to be open-minded, or they wouldn't be playing.
Pow!
I'm a stickler. I'm a jerk. I'm that old, angry man.
With some inexperience, and we got a lot of guys that aren't familiar with playing in this arena. So
Trying to get the younger guys who haven't played as much to understand the value of each possession. And, oh, no, I don't care about that. I couldn't believe I had 8 turnovers. Still 2-1. 2-1 assist turnover ratio.
To protect your home court is something that just feels so normal and natural, but until it's not. You know what I mean? Until you have a lot of guys who don't really understand what that means.
Scotty and Delano, the guys that just did it for the.
I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know. I didn't have that luxury. So it was, be ready to play or don't play. Because we have a lot of free opportunity and a lot of guys playing that haven't really earned it. And not in a bad way, but just we have a lot of young guys that are playing that, on a contender or whatever the case may be, they might not necessarily be getting the same freedom. So, again, offensively, it's whatever, right? We'll figure it out.
I don't talk basketball with too many people. I'm pretty, what do they call it? I'm a basketball elitist.
We're not elite.
No. I love you guys to death, and you are very intelligent. But yeah, it's levels, man. And I stopped valuing non-basketball people's opinion a long time ago.
I would guess that it would be more like an IQ thing.
Be a little rough around the edges from my viewpoint. You guys probably won't notice it. Sharing the ball handling responsibilities. Scotty's had the ball a lot, for better or for worse at times. But
you said Scotty's got the ball a lot, for better or for worse.
Yep.
Pressure gets it, rips and goes, for better or for worse.
Yep.
There's no babies allowed, so you got to kind of get up to speed, or you're going to keep getting stepped on. So
I think that the only thing we don't do now, because we have phones every day, is we don't give time.
I certainly never thought about shooting 20 shots in the game or something like that. I got to the NBA and they told me that's what I had to do. So here we are. Now people don't think I'm a point guard anymore. It's great. I think it's just a reminder for the idiots on Twitter who have got to, beat them up for the last 2 years.
Now I'm seeing that my actions have reactions and consequences.
All right. This is not going to be a long live. I promise. It can't be a long live. I got to get out of here before 2 o'clock. Rumors, reports that I swear I told y'all don't share it, but let's react to it. Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks, 2 members of the esteemed All-Brick team from 2022-2023, are likely, perhaps rumored to be joining the Houston Rockets. Most Raptor fans, I think, I can feel the parade coming. I can feel it. And I don't think I've ever seen this before. I don't think I've ever seen a player this good, right, on the court, still a very good player, regarded as one of the top point guards in the NBA. I don't ever think I've seen a player this good be vilified this much by his fan base without an obvious reason, like he demanded a trade or he has some sort of off-court scandal. So I want to take it to how we got here. I'll give you a little bit of my perspective on how we got here, and I'll also tell you why I did it. Because I don't know if you realize this, but I've been on a 2-year tirade campaign, 2-year campaign, 2-year tirade, 2-year mission to show this fan base that you have been fed a lie. And I know it can sound very conspiratorial when I say this, and please understand that I have never really done this to any other player. in my entire history, because I don't think there was ever another player that warranted this level of scrutiny and examination. It started with, well, it didn't start with, but at least for the fans of this channel, it started with videos like this. It started with the Lowlight series, a dissection of what was actually happening on the court, right? And I couldn't help but watch Blake Murphy Tuesday on the Will Lou show, the Raptors show, as they had a lengthy discussion about the potential of Fred VanVleet moving on and what the Raptors offense might look like without their only point guard. Their only point guard. And I have to say I'm gonna use a little bit of this live to respond to some of the questions that they had, some of the questions that generally do come up anytime the concept of what would this team look like without Fred VanVleet comes up. Because if you look at the splits, if you look at the lineup data, there's some clear indication that he played the minutes he played because he legitimately did not have a backup point guard last year. Oh no, Jeff Doughton, he's not good enough. In a positive box plus minus, but he's not good enough. You know, Malachi Flynn, he's been a train wreck. Delano Banton can't shoot. Scotty Barnes can't run a pick and roll apparently, even though he's been running them since grade 7. So yeah, you have maximum leverage. Let me know in the chat. Give me a like in the chat. Give this video a like if you've read the book 48 Laws of Power. You know, I've always walked through my life understanding that I'm always going to meet people who've read books that I haven't read, and they're going to be armed with information that I'm not armed with. And in those situations, I'm going to have to sink or swim, because information is power. And if you have a lot of information, you have a lot of power. I've always believed this. This is why I always tell kids to read. Read a lot, man. Read a lot, live a lot, make your mistakes. Because at some point, you're going to find somebody who has read a lot of books and has a lot of knowledge that you don't have, and they're going to use it against you. So I want to take a little bit of a detour for 5 minutes, if you'll indulge. And I want to talk about this complicated relationship between this arguably parasocial relationship, but it's not that parasocial. I know he's aware of me. Let's just take a look back at this Fred VanVleet thing. You know, I couldn't find all the posts. I don't know if they've been deleted, but there are, I did the count at some point where I had made close to 120 posts that had over like 7,000. There was like 7,000, you know, likes and comments and reactions on Facebook. And all of them were pointing to almost exactly the same thing. They were almost all pointing to, there's something happening here and you're not seeing it. Like, you are not seeing it. Pensari Basketball was largely created because I wanted to have a platform to talk about this off of Facebook, off of Twitter, where I could actually start to leverage some of what I was doing for subscribers and actual money. These, like, 3 of these videos are basically just supporting Scotty, and 3 of them are basically vilifying Fred VanVleet, right? And some people had a really big issue with this, right? They did not like, and they thought that I was being really unfair. But please understand that posts like this were genuine. That when he changed, I tried to change. When he came out in the midseason, you know, when he came out in the offseason and said, I'm going to try to move off the ball, it's for the betterment of this team. Scotty and, you know, Pascal are going to have the ball. OG's going to have the ball. I'm going to try it out. I'm going to do my best. He came out. He's done this 2 years in a row. I was for it. I applauded it. And when he came out at the beginning of the season and he actually showed he walked the walk, I always commended it. I ran to his defense when people were saying, oh my God, he shot 0 for what? 0 for 11, 0 for 12. I was like, man, he's taking good shots. When people called him a bad defender, I always said, he's a good defender. Relax. I don't think I've been unfair here. I just think I've been looking at things that maybe a lot of people aren't really willing to look at. And one of those major things has been his relationship with his younger teammates, specifically Scotty. But I tell you, when it became unfair, I did my best to be fair, right? To those of you who think, and one of the legitimate points that was brought up on Lake Murphy Tuesdays was, how do you replace this guy? How do you replace him? Scotty's certainly not the shooter Fred is. Last year, Fred VanVleet led the team in drives per game. How do you replace that? Pascal was second. Scotty was a very distant third. OG was fourth. How does Scotty just amp up his driving rate to like 2 times what it was? Well, the obvious, thought process here is, well, he'll have the ball more. He'll just be able to drive downhill more. But some people are like, no. Driving is a skill. Well, a skill that Fred VanVleet is not very good at. When people talk about where will the Raptors offense go without this, czar of a point guard, this all-time great, I'm left to wonder how many years of Fred VanVleet running point have been successful for you. Let's talk about it. Number 1, Tampa. A little bit more Kyle moving off the ball, kind of grooming Fred into that leadership position. Wasn't great, right? Wasn't great. Kyle was still a decent player in Tampa, but the wheels were slowly starting to fall off. But even 3 years removed from Tampa, you're seeing in the playoffs, Kyle's still a hell of a player. But then the next year, the Raptors offense struggles. They get out to a really bad start. Well, they get out to a decent start. Pascal comes back. It's tough. And then they rally late. But I remind you, Fred VanVleet did the vast majority of his damage in that first full year without Kyle when the Raptors were kind of bad. The best stretch of Raptors basketball that year came with Scotty and Pascal. Didn't it? After the All-Star break. Thaddeus Young, Scotty, Pascal, Gary Trent. Fred VanVleet struggled very mightily that part of the year. Very mightily. Okay. What about this year? Fred VanVleet's post-All-Star return. Well, you started out 500 basketball, right? That's when Fred VanVleet was struggling. He was struggling really hard. He was moving off the ball a little bit. He wasn't even able to hit his shots. Where did the wheels really fall off for the Raptors? December, right? It was really when Pascal Siakam came back. They were 500. And suddenly they started to dip under 500. And it wasn't just because Pascal was back. It was because Fred had elevated himself to a new height in the offense. So when you look at the numbers on a vacuum on the year, you say, okay, he didn't really have a backup. And I want to explore that. Imagine you're a person who wants maximum leverage with your organization. Let me give you a blueprint. This is straight from the 48 laws of power. Let me synthesize almost all 48 laws into one law. Never let them know that you could do it better without them. That's a major law of power. Have y'all ever been, I think one of the easy, I think, not to pat myself on the back too much here, maybe I'm doing a little bit too much, right? I asked our audience, why do you think the Raptor fans turned on Fred? 47% of us is play on the court, right? But I do think that this channel deserves a little bit of credit. I do, for pointing it out, for pointing out those glaring issues on the court. Because if you listen to the average Raptor analyst, they would tell you he's still the Raptors' best player or second best player, and that you have no right. And then it's everybody else's fault. It's always somebody else's fault, right? He's a leader. He's a great leader. He's a professional. It's Scotty who has the work ethic issues. It's Malachi who's the bust. It's Delano who can't shoot. It's the roster that doesn't make sense. It's Masai Ujiri who failed to put a center on the roster. You notice that it's never his fault. It was never his fault. But here's the problem. when you create a situation in which you seem to be the solution, the leader, and there's nothing behind you that could possibly even realistically within the realm of possibilities replace you, you gain maximum leverage in a situation. I'll tie it back to a couple of quick examples from my own life. When my mother passed away, she was my last parent to pass away. And suddenly a vulture who will remain nameless came into my life and became my only family. And this person became like everything. And I was down and out. And they used that relationship on a 20-year-old who is naive and going through a lot of emotional shit, trying to process the death of my mom. And basically had me sign over a really terrible document that ended up costing me more money than I would ever make in another year in my life. And I just signed it over, and I trusted this person. Because in that moment, you don't even think that this person's intentions could be anything but good because they're so charming and they're so important. Y'all ever been in a relationship? I don't know if you're a girl or guy, whatever. You ever been in a relationship with someone who just spends like an entire year or 2 years of your relationship systematically putting you down, putting you down, putting you down, putting you down? You started that relationship up here, but by the middle of it, you're here. And I tell you that every time you think about leaving, you think to yourself, well, who will want me now? Who would want me now? Or what would I even do without this person? This person literally does everything for me. They're the person who helps me with all my problems. I'll tell you something about good people. You never feel this way around good people. Good people empower you constantly. When Fred VanVleet came into the Toronto Raptors situation, he came into a situation with 3 point guards ahead of him. What was his immediate comment? Well, they can get rid of one of them. The adversarial competition, whether you admired it from a 4th string guard who was on a Exhibit 10 deal, which turned into a 2-way deal or a camp deal or a, minimum contract, if you admired it then, if you adopt that same mentality and continue to carry it forward, whatever you want to consider bet on yourself being, whatever it means to you, if you want to extend that thought process forward, then you would always view every person who came behind you as a threat to do to you what you did to DeLon Wright or what you did to Corey Joseph, which is they're my competition, not my teammates. Kyle didn't view Fred as competition. Kyle didn't view DeLon as competition. Kyle didn't view Corey Joseph as competition, because if you're a genuinely secure person, you don't view people as competition. And if you think I'm just bullshitting, why have I been so supportive of this channel when this channel is rocking my ass? In terms of views, Goateology is doing things in the Raptor space that I haven't dreamed of doing. 50,000, 60,000 views on my favorite player. Why would I support this guy? I'm not threatened by him. Support him genuinely because he's good for basketball. And he's good for something that I care about, which is the Raptors. If you haven't seen his video on Darko Rajakovic, please watch it. It will help this guy. I hope this guy gets like 50 times more subscribers than we do. No competition here. My life is not zero sum. There's plenty for everybody to eat. I believe that when an event happens to you that traumatizes you or hurts you in some way, you can either become one of two people. You can either become a person to do that to other people. So that means I could go find, vulnerable 20-year-old people who just lost a parent and then fuck them out of, a life savings. Or I can aim to stop that in a way that I wish someone had done for me. Basketball is a business. It's always been a business. Fred VanVleet has a vested interest. His parties, his agents, his supporters, his media member cronies, and his people within this space have a vested interest in you and the Toronto Raptors and the entire NBA believing the following set of things. he was not the problem. He was a major part of the solution, that he was the victim in this situation, that this fan base, right or wrong, has turned on him illogically. It's due to a whole string of misinformation. We didn't watch it all happen with our eyes. We didn't listen to it with our ears. We're just ungrateful. We're ungrateful to this great leader, championship leader. Winning was not the goal. And if you believe that he's going to Houston, I don't know if I do, you know winning is not the goal. Because if winning was the goal, then coming back to the Raptors or finding some way to sign and trade to go to the Clippers, maybe for a little less money, would be the goal. But that's not the goal. When people show you who they are, believe them. Houston with a bunch of kids and Dylan Brooks, you will be in the lottery 100% next year. Fred VanVleet ain't turning that ship around. In fact, as someone who really, really honestly loves a lot of the young players on Houston, Raphael Stone, I'm talking to you. This video, believe me, it'll be very easy for me to just ride this out. 6 p.m. tomorrow, Houston signs him, $40 million, gone. Not our problem anymore. But you know what? I'm thinking about Jabari Smith Jr. here. I am. I'm thinking about Jalen Green. Not a huge fan, but I like him enough. Amen Thompson, Cam Whitmore, Alperen Şengün. Yeah, that's what those guys need, Raphael Stone. They need a veteran in the locker room who, when there's a 4-game losing streak, he's out in the media saying, well, no babies allowed, a lot of free opportunity here. That's what you need? Read the room. It's personal. I don't want to make basketball personal, but this feels personal to me because this dude and his people have massively managed to convince people that this dude right here is not a point guard. Why? He can't shoot? That's the reason he's not a point guard. He can't shoot. You see his passing, right? I'm not blind. Like sometimes I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here. I'm watching Scotty run point. Did we not watch Scotty start at point for the only 2 playoff games that y'all have won all year? 3 years. 3 years. The Raptors have won 2 playoff games. Who started those 2 playoff games at point, or who ended those playoff games at point? Scotty. Scotty Barnes ran point. Who ran point guard for a Division I school, a major Division I school, as a freshman, as their best player? Florida State University. Who was their point guard? Scotty Barnes. Who was the point guard at NSU school? Scotty Barnes. AAU, Scotty Barnes. Grade school, Scotty Barnes. My God. He became a mixtape legend in grade 8. Why? Because he was a 6'5" point guard. What did Kyle Lowry say when he said, I watched Scotty Barnes in grade 7? What did he say? Kyle Lowry, the GOAT. Now, you don't want to believe me because I'm an idiot? Fine. You want to believe Blake Murphy and Will Lou and everyone else who thinks he's not a point guard or that it'd be nice to have a Scotty at point experiment. Then listen to Magic Johnson tell you he reminds him of himself. He's got a little magic in him. Do I need to play the quote? Go look it up for yourself. Kyle Lowry said what? I always thought he was a point guard. He said it almost like surprisingly. Like you need evidence that he's a point guard. Go read his Instagram bio. For the last 2 years, this poor kid, and I don't mean to be demeaning to Scotty. He's my favorite player, obviously. I'm not saying poor kid like in a sense that he's not like a human that is 6'8". I'm saying poor kid because can you imagine how weird it must be to have played a position pretty much your whole life? You're not developing at this. It's not Giannis Antetokounmpo. No matter how much you want it to be Giannis Antetokounmpo, it's not. This is not some raw basketball player who just picked up basketball the other day and we're like, oh, here's a great idea. Let me put him at point. No, this is not how this happened. No, this is a kid who has played basketball for almost 20 years now. And for the vast majority of those 20 years, he's played point. Yeah, he played small forward a little bit. He played a little bit of power forward. That's great. But for the vast majority of his life, he has seen himself as a guard. So who are you to say that because his jump shot isn't super smooth, that he's not a point guard? Ben Simmons was considered one of the top 10, top 12 best players in the NBA. He was a point guard. He couldn't shoot shit. He was a worse shooter than Scottie. Russell Westbrook won MVP as a point guard. Entered the is he the greatest point guard of all time debate. He couldn't shoot either. Magic Johnson was not a great shooter. He was also a point guard. There's a lot of guys who have managed to play point without being elite shooters. And I don't think Scottie's going to be one of them. I think he's going to develop that shot, and I think he's going to be fine. And I think when you go on a show, a syndicated show with a massive audience and a massive platform, and you start to poke holes at this idea that this guy's a point guard, no wonder he has 6'9" point guard in his bio. It's almost like I wonder, I don't know this, but I'm just saying, I try to empathize. I wonder if he logs onto Instagram every day and that's just there as a reminder of who he is. Because he is that. What is a point guard? Is it just the shortest guy on the court? I promise you it's not. I don't think Malachi's a point guard, and I don't think Fred's a point guard. Am I in the minority in that? Yes, because their ESPN bio lists them as a point guard. Although hilariously, ESPN listed Fred VanVleet as a shooting guard. I promise I didn't pull any favors there. I think they saw his play style. I've received threats. Before we did Pensari basketball, I don't think I've ever shared this with you guys. I was in line for a job opportunity with a somewhat major publication, a couple. And one of these would come with a media pass within short order. It would be like 3 months of sort of try it out, write for us a little bit, and we'll get you a media pass. We'll get you into all these scrums. You get to ask Scottie questions. And it was presented to me in such a way that I immediately jumped at it. I was so excited. It didn't pay a lot, but I was like, let me do this. I'm a good writer. You wouldn't know this by this channel, but I am a good writer. I promise you I am. I may not be a great podcaster, but I'm a good writer. And I thought to myself, okay, pay your dues, but you get access. All those questions that you don't like being asked, every time you're watching these scrums, you're like, why didn't someone ask that question? Granted, now we have Samson and Oren, and they ask a lot of questions that are really great. But I got to tell you, 3 years ago, it was not like this. And so I was very, very motivated to take this opportunity until I started telling them what kind of questions I actually wanted to ask. And then they were like, nah, you can't do that. We're gonna lose our access. We're gonna lose our access to the Raptors. They're not gonna let you ask these questions. You know what I would have asked? I would have asked Fred VanVleet, why do you think Scottie's not a point guard? I would have put him on the spot right there. Why do you think this? I would have asked him straight up, how much did you contribute to winning when you were 20 or when you were 20 years old to an NBA team? Oh, right. You weren't in the NBA when you were 20. My bad. I would have said that. And I would have got a boot out of that media scrum. No wonder these guys don't like me. You don't like me because I'm telling you the truth. I really think that. And I maybe you don't like me because I'm being an asshole about it. That's fine too. The Raptors have 2 point guards on this roster, in my opinion. Whether Fred VanVleet comes back or not, they have 2 point guards on this roster. If he comes back, they have an extra shooting guard. Congratulations. Scottie, Jeff Doughton. I played point, and I was not a point guard. Truth. Didn't see the game that way. Didn't see it from the perspective of a point guard. Anytime I watched a really good point guard run the team, I felt it in everyone. I would throw passes off target. I was just undersized. And so I recognize a really good point guard when I see it because it's everything that I didn't have. That forward vision, that ability to set people up, that ability to make people better. Chris Boucher talked about it too, how much he misses Kyle Lowry. Why do you miss Kyle Lowry, bro? Why do you miss Kyle Lowry? Because your game doesn't feel the same. Look at the playoffs. Look at what Kyle did. Kyle's a real point guard, pure through and through. not a Jose Calderon, John Stockton, dribble the ball for like, no, he's a point guard. People had doubts about that early on in Kyle's career, which is crazy to me. No, he is a real point guard because his desire is to make other people better. Now, this entire notion of Scotty's not a point guard stems from, he's big, he's muscular, he's kind of built like a center, and he seems to do well in that role, right? He seems to do well in that playmaking role as a center or as a short roller. And so there is an inclination when you're big that people want to throw you into the post. It's always been this way. Tallest guy, you're the center. That's always been that way. And I think for a lot of bigger players, sometimes it can be a bit of a curse because you don't naturally see yourself in there. You don't see yourself banging. Now, Scotty cares about winning a lot, so he's not going to tank every time you put him at center or power forward. He's not just going to simply tank his value because he cares about the team. So he's going to do all that hustle stuff and the small stuff. And maybe that stuff is a little bit easier. There is this theory that it's really hard to be a rookie point guard in the NBA, that most of them really do tend to struggle, that most of them tend to make a lot of losing plays. If you're looking at Jalen Suggs, Cade Cunningham, if you buy both those guys at point guards, which I don't, but let's just say that, those guys are point guards, it doesn't usually result in winning. I think you have a much better chance, if you want my opinion, to be a rookie wing and contribute to winning. And if you look at a lot of the players who contributed to winning as rookies, they tend to be wings. It's an easier position on the court. Point is a really hard position to learn as a rookie. But because of Fred VanVleet and because of the media's insistence that Scotty's not a point guard, it's always felt like a really big uphill battle to get him reps at that position. I don't know if at 6:01 p.m. tomorrow night, we're going to hear that Fred VanVleet is going to the Houston Rockets, or if this has all been some massive, massive smokescreen. I don't know that. I think anyone who tells you that they do is wrong, because Fred VanVleet cannot be Houston's number one target unless they've tampered already and reached out to James Harden, and they know for a fact that James is going to get the offer he wants from Philly, and Fred is just the next thing down. And if that's the case, that's tampering. I don't know if that's going to happen. But if it happens, and you have the thought in your head of, oh my God, what are the Raptors going to do now? Please heed my words and just remember them. You're going to be fine. I promise. Let Jeff Doughton and Scotty Barnes, two guys that I swear you think can't shoot, but Jeff can shoot. Jeff can hoop. Those are Fred's words. Jeff is a hooper. Jeff can hoop. He can hoop. And he's a really good player. It's just really difficult to put up massive stats when you have 11 or 12% usage. It's really hard. I think Delano Banton has some potential, maybe. And look, if Fred VanVleet doesn't come back, you have your full mid-level. You can use it on a backup point guard to stabilize, give Jeff Doughton some injury insurance, or perhaps just give Jeff Doughton, a 3-year contract, because I think he's going to be worth it. Dude hasn't left Toronto. He's a really good person. Like, I've never met Jeff Doughton, but I can tell you just from his interviews and watching him over the past few years, this dude is a really solid person and a really good player and a really good defender. And the type of player that, honestly, I could see this guy being a backup on a championship team. I really could. I don't know if I could see him being a starting point guard, but his G League stuff was promising. I like him a lot. Okay. I want Jeff Doughton, 3 years, Fred VanVleet, $30 million. Jeff Doughton, $3 million, or Fred VanVleet, $30 million. I promise you, I'd take Jeff Doughton 10 times out of 10. Okay. So I think you're going to be fine. I promise you're going to be fine. All right. And to everyone out there saying we don't have a point guard, the Raptors identified their point guard 5 years ago. You know who it was? Scotty Barnes in high school. He's a point guard. They drafted him as a point guard. And on draft night, because he's 6'8", 6'9", big, strong, huge human being, Kendrick Perkins said, I'm going to pour one out for Pascal Siakam. This is the end of Pascal Siakam in Toronto. I had the exact opposite thought. And I have a feeling Fred VanVleet had the same thought, which was, I'm going to pour one out for Fred VanVleet taking the role of Kyle Lowry because they just drafted the player in that draft who most reminded me of Kyle Lowry, and that was Scotty Barnes. So I'm looking forward to better days in Toronto. If we have disagreed or agreed, if I've pissed you off with my Fred VanVleet stuff, if you felt that I've been really unduly unfair or mean, promise you, I don't take any pleasure in doing that. I take pleasure in the fact that it was effective. I don't take pleasure in doing it. But the reason that I did it was very much personal, because I didn't want someone to be able to manipulate so many people. Because let's be honest, this is a really small channel. It's a really small channel, right? It's really difficult to take on the entire media machine and the Toronto Raptors PR department and Fred VanVleet, who has like 1,000 times more followers than we do, right? And a much bigger platform and a much bigger. So it really, I can't even say that Pensar Basketball did this. He did this. We just gave him the gasoline. He lit the match. Okay. We pointed out certain things that he was saying, and then every single time, once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. And I want to thank the NBA storyteller for this. I really do have to get out of here right now, but I want to thank the NBA storyteller for this, because he's done this on a few subjects, and his storytelling, craftsmanship, etc. Just even though he's a 60,000 sub YouTube channel, the way that he would tell the story and craft it, once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it, and it just became part of the lexicon of NBA. And I gave, there's always been like, I want to say like a 5% segment of this fan base that genuinely believed that Fred was kind of overrated and not really a point guard. And all I needed to do, I believed, it wasn't, I don't have to convert 95% of people into thinking what I think or seeing what I see. I really just needed to give those 5% of people like the facts and the video and the evidence and the clips. And I think it's worked, to be honest. Like, it's a lot of fucking views, man. It's a lot of views. And I'm just looking forward to moving on. And I hope that if you came here because you just enjoyed watching me, complain about Fred, I hope you'll stay here as I celebrate the next iteration of Toronto Raptors basketball. I'm really excited. And yes, I'm going to be really, really pissed if he comes back now. Yeah, anyways, hit the sub up, hit the like. I apologize, I can't get to these comments, but if there are, hold on, I'll just take a look real quick. This post really bothered me. Which one? He is not Magic. Stop it. Yo, I was quoting Magic Johnson. Are you disagreeing with Magic Johnson about who he sees Scotty as? Are you going to disagree with KG? Are you going to disagree with all the players? Jason Kidd? Dude, there are some people who know basketball a little bit better than you and I who have really, really always seen him as a point guard. So who the fuck are we to say he's not? I'm certainly not saying that he's not, but Russ has great basketball IQ. No, he does not. No, he does not. He is a gifted passer, but he does not have great basketball IQ. Basketball IQ at some point would have stopped you from taking some of the dumbass shots that you take. Anyways, y'all, take care. Have a good one. And make sure to hit subscribe and like on your way in or on your way out. I really appreciate it. Take care. Bye.